Hello everyone, Derek Floyd here, Beautiful Now Podcast. Welcome to the Sunday edition of Chasing the Impossible, just in case you missed it. That's right, this is the segment where we replay some of our vintage episodes of Chasing the Impossible, because a lot of folks didn't get to see them the first time, and we hope that this is one of the episodes you were looking forward to seeing again. Now, if you haven't had a chance, please hit us with a like or subscribe to the channel. This lets me get the most updated content to you as soon as it's available. And as always, remember our episodes are brought to you by IK Multimedia. Now, today's particular guest was one of my good friends who's always been one of the most amazing recording engineers I've ever known, a Grammy Award winner to be exact. And he's worked with the likes of Amy Winehouse, Ricky Martin, even Whitney Houston. He's helped to shape the sound that you heard on the record before you knew who it was. So let's take a step back of an amazing engineer who's still doing it today. His name is Gary Noble. Enjoy. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Chasing the Impossible. I'm so excited, as always, to bring you a brand new story from someone that's inspired me and that I hope they'll inspire you. This gentleman is an award-winning engineer who's done so many great things. I can't wait for him to share his story. His name is Gary Noble. Gary, you there, man?
Yes, I'm here, Derek. Thanks for having me again. It's good seeing you, even though it's only virtual. But
right?
It's always great having conversations with you and stuff. I always feel so much more inspired and enlightened after our conversations.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. And you've inspired me as long as we've known each other. You've done so many great things, and some of the accolades you've done. Let me just kind of lean in a little bit to say, tell me a little bit about Amy Winehouse and some of the things you've accomplished. You were an engineer/producer. What is your title?
My official title is audio engineer.
Okay.
Specifically mixing. That's my forte. That's what I'm usually called for.
Okay.
But I do everything across the board. When I started out, it was only analog. Then there was a lot of MIDI stuff, then digital. So I had to basically learn along the way. So I'm kind of a jack of all trades.
Okay.
But my main priority, my main focus is mixing. That's what people approach me for.
And some of your accolades, some records that you've mixed have been all the Amy Winehouse records, the
right.
Fugees. Tell a bit about those. Give me some of the records you've mixed.
Amy Fugees, Tony Braxton, Whitney Houston.
Wow.
Inika Mosey, Here Comes the Hot Stepper was one of the first big records that I did. It still gets played to this day. So and I did stuff with Nas. Say again?
You got a lot of records under your belt.
Yes.
Yeah.
30 years.
30 years in this game, man?
Yeah, 30 years. I'm still going.
Wow.
They're like, what are you trying to do? Set a new record?
Wow.
I'm like, no, this is what I love. This is my passion. That's what I do. I might be weird, maybe I'm a little off in the head, but I still feel the way that I do then now about sound and music and working with great artists. And I've been lucky that for the most part I was flying under the radar, but I was always working with really great producers, artists, songwriters, musicians, and I still love it. I still have a passion. I still look forward to going to the studio and working on great music.
Can you tell my subscribers what an actual audio engineer does? What do you do?
Okay. Besides the audio stuff, technical stuff, we're a psychologist or a father, a brother, a priest. Let's get it. It's mostly science, but it's also art and psychology involved. Like you have to be able to make the artist comfortable, working in tandem with the producer, of course, make the artist comfortable so you can get the best performance out of them. You know what I mean? As far as setting the light in for move whatever they want, kicking everybody out of the control room to make the artist comfortable.
Sure.
But of course, the meters, making sure the sound quality is the best. There's no noise, no hum. It's not distorting, clipping, stuff like that. So The way I was taught is that I have to have three eyes in my head. You know, that's impossible, but it's just a figure of speech.
Well, that's what it's about. It's impossible. It's okay.
Yeah, right. So I have to have an eye on the artist, one on the producer, and one on the meters.
Sure.
At all times.
Sure.
And I have to make sure that the producer, male or female, is getting what they want.
Sure.
And the artist, male or female, is getting what they want. And then make sure the session flows smoothly. Then on the mixing, that's the recording side. On the mixing side now, I have to make sure that the sound, the overall sound and feel, the vibe of the record is what they were looking for when we started the creative process.
So as an engineer, you are the one kind of carving out what each instrument sits in the mix. You're making sure that you can hear the guitar, you can hear the kick drum, you know, you can hear the vocal properly. Because an engineer has to hear everything in that song and then convey that almost like a message to the person listening, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so engineer is such an important job, and I don't think people always understand. You know, you get a record from on the radio, you just think, oh, the producer made the beats, but without the engineer making it sound the way it sounds.
Yes, I'm not to blow my own horn, but we as engineers are a very, very important component.
Yeah.
In the whole process, and I think we're like the unsung heroes. Yeah. We're overlooked a lot.
You're like the fifth Beatle. You know, you're back in the back making the mix, right?
Exactly. But if you take the engineer out of the process, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's like trying to drive your cars with no tires. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
And that is impossible. There you go. So, man, let's dive in and figure out. You know, when did you discover what your impossible was, and what is your impossible? What made it happen?
I would say while I was still in high school, I started DJing when I was 15. I've always been into sound. I got into trouble when I was 5 years old for playing with my dad's stereo. He always told me, don't touch this, it's off limits.
Oh, yeah.
I was only allowed to handle the records while he was in my presence.
Of course.
At 5 years old, I knew how to put the record on the turntable. I know how to clean the records, how to clean the turntable, how to adjust the bass and the treble, depending on what record I was hearing. But I didn't know what I was doing, but I just knew that it sounded better if I did this or it sounded better if I did that. And then around 14, 15, I got exposed to the whole hip-hop explosion in New York, and I started DJing.
Okay.
And from there, I got to the point where I was looking at, people who know me have heard this story already, but I used to be able to pick the record out of the case and look at it, and just from whether it was Atlantic, Columbia, or Sugar Hill or whoever that's on the label, I already knew how the record was going to sound, so I put it on the turntable and adjust the mixer, and because they all had their own sonic signature. So after a while, I was like, okay, why does this record sound like this? Okay. And why does that one sound like that? And why does the drums sound like this on this one? And the vocals sound like that. So I had a friend that lived on my block, a couple houses away, and he was into music and stuff, but he only did like part-time. You know, he produced records and had a couple artists. And I went to the studio with him one day. And that was it. I walked in, I was like, this is where I need to be.
Sure.
And I stayed there the whole night. And at the end, I was like, went up to the engineer and said, listen, I really want to learn how to be an engineer.
Sure.
And he was like, you sure you want to do this? It's a lot of work. It's really hard. It takes time, blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
I was like, yeah, I want to do it. So he said to me, okay, if you're serious, go and take the MRT program, which stands for Modern Recording Technology, at Institute of Audio Research. This is in the 80s.
Wow.
That was the only school that was available for that. It was a few blocks from NYU.
Sure.
I said, okay. So I went and investigated. Remember, I couldn't go online or anything. So I had to physically go to the school, get the tour, this and that, fill out the application, everything. Yeah. Then I went to school there and finished the program. And when I finished, I went back to him and said, okay, I have my certificate here. I completed it. I got my little diploma.
Yeah.
I'm ready. Let's go. And he started laughing. And I was like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
He was like, oh, nothing's wrong. I'm just surprised that you actually did it. He said, 20 people have asked me, have told me rather, that they want to be engineers. Now, out of the 20, you were the only one who went and did what I told you to do.
Wow.
So he was like, okay, come on, let's go.
Wow.
And that's how it started.
History, yeah.
But while I was doing it, a lot of friends and family members was like, you sure you want to do that? That's not really a, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A real career and stuff.
Yeah.
At the time, I was going to school. I was taking computer science and all that stuff. And they were like, no, you need to go get a real job and go work at a company. And I was like, okay, I like computers, I like electronics, but this is my thing. Ever since I was little, I've always been attracted to sound.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think this is my calling. I need to do this. So at least let me try. If it doesn't work, then. So I just decided that I'm going to not pay attention to the naysayers and just push ahead. And I'm not going to lie and say to you, oh, it just happened. Like, you know, this week I decided to do it. Next week I was in the studio getting paid as an engineer. It took, it was a transition.
It was a process.
I had to do the internship and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was working just so I could, because, you know, internships don't pay. So just so I could pay the bills. I was working a regular job. So I would work 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Then go to the studio and work from 3 p.m. to whenever.
Wow.
And then come back. Sometimes I would shower at the studio or I would drive back home, shower and change and go right back to work. Wow. I was sleeping on my lunch break.
Wow.
Stuff like that.
So you meant business, man.
Yeah, I was serious about it. I wanted to do it. Like, my friends didn't see me for like a year straight.
Wow.
And there was, you know,
you're teaching folks something today. You're teaching them about grind.
Yeah, I had to sacrifice. I give up my social life. Remember, when I'm doing this, I'm still in my early 20s.
So it had to seem impossible to you to actually accomplish. You're like, you know what? I'm going to be an engineer. Your family's like, no way, not going to happen. And you said, you know what? I got to do this. I got to do this. So you decided, I'm going to be an engineer. What was the fuel in you that kept you going, that said, I got to do this? I mean, you know.
The music.
The music. The passion for the music.
Basically the music. I was just, you know.
Because people give up. People decide they're going to do something and they give up. So the music just kept you going.
Well, I've never been much of a quitter.
Okay.
Once I make up my mind to do something, I'm going to do it. Like, I don't jump at every opportunity, but when I do pursue one, I either go 100% or don't do it. Even now, when I'm working on stuff, when I'm doing a demo for upcoming artists, or I'm doing a project for Sony Music, I approach it the same way.
There you go.
It's a priority, and I give it 100%. If I'm not going to give you a project 100%, I'll just tell you I can't do it. I'm not available.
I love it.
Yeah.
You know, scriptures say make your yes a yes and your no a no.
A no, right.
And see, people don't get that concept, but if you just say yes or no and clear it, there's no maybe, I'm going to try to get to it. No.
Right. That causes problems.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in half-stepping. Right. I don't want to be indecisive, and I don't want to half-step on anybody because that's their life.
Yes.
That's like a piece of them that you're dealing with, and you can't just, whatever, and just kind of like gloss it over. And you got to do it properly.
Yes,
and I mean, that was and is still my approach to it.
That's good, man. So the music was the passion that kept you going to be an engineer. You had a passion for sound. You said you were really in love with sound, so that kept you in that space. But I mean, the grind of doing your homework to figure out how to do this, you went to school. You grinded out doing it at the internships. Yeah, you know?
And I want to mention something about that because I've had a lot of graduates from SAE and Full Sail and stuff that work with me over the years. And one thing that I learned from back then, and that's why I always tell all the upcoming engineers and producers that I work with, is that when you go to school and you graduate, you feel, because I did, you feel like, okay, I got it, I know everything. I could walk into any studio and run the session and all. Right. No. School just gives you the foundation. When you step into the studio, into the real world, that's when the real schooling begins.
Yes.
And one thing I want to mention, you and I spoke about this before in conversation. Learning never stops.
Never stops.
Life is school. So don't think just because I graduated, I got my bachelor's, my master's or whatever, or you know what I mean, or my audio certificate that, okay, I'm good. I don't have to learn anything more. It never stops. I'm still learning. I still go to seminars.
Yeah.
I still, you know, somebody tells me about something, I go online and look it up. If I know someone like you, I'll call you up and say, hey, I heard IK is coming out with a new product, blah, 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 and then try to get the background on it and see if it's something that would fit my workflow.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a constant process. But the point I was trying to make is when you graduate school, you have the foundation now to build on top of that. You don't have the whole house. You just have the foundation.
Yeah, it's the beginning, man.
It's just the beginning, but I know a lot of these young guys can relate because I was the same. And when I graduated and I had that piece of paper, I was like, yeah, I'm an engineer.
I'm somebody now.
I'm somebody, yeah. And I walked to the studio, and then I was making coffee and cleaning the bathroom, answering the phones. And I'm like, man, I didn't go to school for this, but the reason why they do that is they're trying to see what your character is and if you're a good person to represent the studio. Because when you work in an environment like the studio or any company, post-production house, anything like that, your personality, your character is representative of them. So if you're not the right person, they're not gonna want to hire you. So that's and if you're the type of person where you say, "Oh, I'm not cleaning nobody's floor, I'm not making nobody coffee," that's not what I went to school for. Then you're not the right guy. Because at the end of the day, you're providing a service. So even though, like even now, I have accolades and stuff like that. I don't walk around beating my chest. Oh, I'm this great engineer. I got Grammys, this and that. I'm providing service. I'm there to make sure that the artist or the producer, the label, the A&R, everybody leaves the studio happy. Yeah. So it's not about, I'm not saying you have to kiss anybody's feet or worship. It's not about that. It's about, having humility and strength of character and then focus on the job at hand. And just get it done to the best of your ability. That's what it's about.
I like it. That to me, that's telling them, you're gonna have to do your homework. You have to grind it out. You're gonna have to make the coffee sometime. You got to clean the toilet sometime. It's all in the grind. You got to do your homework. And you said something earlier that when you wanted to be an engineer, you said, "Well, I went to school and then I found a mentor. Then I did an internship. So you did all your homework before you really became an engineer. Now, the school prepared you, but you had to grind all that out. So
exactly.
Super, super important that the subscribers hear the fact that it's not overnight, man. You're gonna have it's gonna take you years to accomplish.
It took years. Like for me, the whole process from when I said, "Okay, I'm going to pursue this," to when I was actually an engineer recording was like 5 years.
Yeah.
And
it's not immediate.
Nah.
and then fast forward some more years to your first Grammy.
Right.
How many years took you to get your first Grammy?
Maybe another like 7.
So from incarnation of your impossible thing
to like 12 years.
12 years to get to the pinnacle of what you do. So
but
you got to get that.
That's another thing I want to get to also. It's great to get a Grammy, but it's not the end all and be all of what it is. Because I know many great engineers and producers who don't have a Grammy, but they've done amazing work.
Sure.
They've got nominated, so they never have a Grammy because it's great to get the award, but don't let that be your only focus. If you put the music first, if you make the music a priority, everything else will fall into place. I have tons of awards overseas too that never gets mentioned because it's not in the U.S. I got mobile awards, and I got I forgot what it's named because I can't speak French fluently. I have 2 French Grammys. Like it's the equivalent of a Grammy in France.
Wow.
Yeah. So you know what I mean?
And your Grammys here in the U.S. are for the Grammys?
For Amy Winehouse mainly, and there's like 1 or 2 other projects that I did, but it's mainly for Amy.
And which record was that?
For Back to Black.
Yeah, see, everybody doesn't know, so you got to share a little bit with them.
So, okay,
yeah,
right.
So this is everyone's just coming in. So for those of you who don't understand, Gary's won an actual Grammy for Back to Black, right?
Right.
which was one of Amy's most successful records. He was with Amy for many, many years until, of course, her unfortunate passing. But he worked on all of her records, so that's a great accomplishment to have done and reached that pinnacle of your career and work with such a great artist, among others, I'm sure. So, as you have expanded and worked with many people and gotten to where you are now, can you tell me a time when failure came into play and you had to learn from that?
Yes. I don't remember exact year it was. I was doing a session in Studio 2 at Hit Factory in New York, right? And on 54th Street. The new Hit Factory at the time, not the old one, the new building.
Right.
And I was working with Vader Nobles, who was one of the producers for Lauryn Hill's first album. He had an artist, his personal artist that he was doing. He asked me to mix the record. I went to mix the record, and they wanted it done, analog style. So we was mixing the SSL, mixing the half-inch, the whole nine. But the session was in Pro Tools. I didn't know how to use Pro Tools.
Okay.
So the next day, the assistant that was assisting me at the time, he's now a good engineer. He's a great engineer himself. He's done work with a lot of people, including Beyonce. By the time he was assisting me, he knew how to work Pro Tools. So he did all the key commands, all that stuff. And I would tell him, hey, I want this here, I want that there, do this, do that, blah, 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 blah. The very next day, I went to Sam Ash and bought Pro Tools LE and a Digio 1 and spent 3 days teaching myself how to use Pro Tools.
Sure.
Because I realized that that's the way things are going, and I have to know how to use it.
Gotcha. So, and as for the subscribers out there, Pro Tools and analog, these are definitions of the way you record the sound. Pro Tools is a digital application that works on your computer that you record all your sound into, and it plays back everything you put into it, and you do all the quote-unquote mixing on that. Analog would be everything on a big mixer like you see in the studios, and they put it to a gigantic tape machine and record it all back just like you would on a computer. So analog to digital, just for the people who don't understand that part of the conversation. So definitely you came to a situation where you're like, man, I failed at this. I got to go fix it. And you learn from it.
They loved the mix, but I didn't know how to use Pro Tools. And they were looking at me like, how you been an engineer, you don't know how to use Pro Tools? And I was like, well, when I started out, there was no Pro Tools. I remember when Pro Tools first came out. The initial Pro Tools was called Sound Tools. And then from there went to Pro Tools, Session 8, all that stuff. Yeah. So
so you had to fall a little bit to get back up.
But instead of saying, oh man, I can't, I'm not gonna learn this either. This is, I'm just doing everything analog, and when that stops, I'm just gonna stop and do. I wanted to stay viable. And not only that, I was actually intrigued by digital. I didn't like the sound at first, but I was actually intrigued by it because I saw the capabilities of it, what it could be, and how much it could revolutionize audio.
Sure.
So I was like, no, I'm going to learn this thing.
Gotcha.
So I did that. I went and bought it myself, my own money. Sat down with the manual in my lap for 3 days straight. I didn't do anything but that, eat, and sleep.
That'll do it right there.
Yeah, believe me, the next time I stepped in the studio in a Pro Tools session, I knew what I was doing.
You knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
So, was there ever a moment where you got to your career, so to speak, and you felt like, I'm not going to make it. Like, I've gotten this far, but something's happened where it's making me doubt myself. Like, should I really be doing this? Did you ever have that moment? You may not have, but just, a lot of people get to the almost of their success, and they doubt themselves and never cross that line. You know what I mean?
Right. I think I might have some years ago. This is before Amy and all that, and I started having like doubts about, am I going in the right direction, and am I doing this, or should I branch off to something else? Like, should I go do broadcast?
Did you ever think, should I go back to the school and not do music, or you just said, this is it, I'm staying in music?
Nah, I'm staying in music. Like, even if I decided to go back to school, I was going to do something that was somehow related to it, because I knew that's where it was for me.
Wow. Wow.
So I just knew that no matter what path I chose, it was going to be audio related.
See, that's a blessing in the sense of so many people are, like I said in the beginning, they try to identify and clarify what their impossible thing is, but then they get there and they veer off to the left or veer off to the right. They don't stay focused on that one thing. You have stayed focused on one thing your whole that whole life.
Yeah.
It's sound.
I'm like the horse in Central Park with the blinders on.
It's just sound.
I just see straight ahead. That's it.
And that's got you where you are.
I need to mention this. Even though I'm focused on being an engineer, I keep a very open mind when it comes to the music and the production styles and everything else like that. So I might be an older guy and I'm analog dude, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I adapted to digital and I'm open to everything. Like I'm hip to all the stuff that's going on with the production and the music and, all the styles and stuff like. Someone said to me recently, "Oh, you're old, dude. You're an old cat. You don't know what time it is now. You don't know what." I'm like, I know what's going on. I know what the sounds. I told the guys to listen. The drum samples that you're using on the song, I used to record the actual machine. I know what it sounds like when you record it to a Pultec and a DBX 165A, those two to A800.
Wow.
Sounds like that's the sound that you have there. The company that made the samples recorded it that way and then put it into Pro Tools. I packaged it and sell it. So you didn't have to do the work. I actually did.
So I know
I know how to create the sound. So if I know how to create the sample, I know how to give it the sound for the record.
Yeah.
And the people who are willing to give me a chance to do it, they love it. Like a song I recently did for a singer-songwriter out of Atlanta that I know. She put this record out with her and Jaim, and it's straight hardcore trap hip-hop.
Yeah.
And everybody that's heard the record has been like, "Hey, man, great job. The record sounds amazing, blah, 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 blah." So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When it started out, there was no trap, but
and that's a whole other genre now.
That's a whole other genre, but I know what it's supposed to sound like.
Wow.
At the end of the day, the vocals have to convey the feeling and the message of the song, and the track has to support it. So no matter what style of music you're in, there's a certain relationship between the sounds, the melodies, and the vocals and everything that has to be maintained.
Yeah, sure.
And I've been exposed to so many genres and styles of music and so many different production styles over the length of my career that I literally just get any track and just say, okay, this needs to happen, blah, 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 and just make it work.
Got a system.
Yeah, it just makes it work. And basically what I do is a list. Like most people, they send me an MP3 ref of the song. I could listen one time from beginning to end, and I knew exactly what needs to be done to make the mix translate.
That's awesome.
But that comes with experience. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, let's kind of close it off. The conversation. You've been awesome talking to us. We so appreciate it. I think that at the end of the day, what I want people to understand is that there's a process, and you have to trust the process to reach that impossible thing, and just never give up. Yeah, I mean, I just asked, was there a time that you ever thought you were going to give up, and you said no, because somewhere in your mind you trust the process. You figured out, okay, I'm gonna have to get to here, to here, to here,
to here. Right. It's the steps.
And if you could tell someone about your story in a few sentences, say just trust the process, how would you just describe it as far as the process for you?
Well, the process for me was that I knew that I was passionate about music and sound, and then I said, okay, now let's sit down and map out how are you going to get from point A to point B to point C. So first, let's get into a studio and let's get around a real engineer, a real producer, whatever, see how they work, ask questions. Oh, let me mention this. When I started out, when I was an intern and assistant, I used to walk around with a pad in my back pocket. So every time I would see something that caught my interest, I would write it down.
Yeah.
And I would ask questions, but I only asked the engineer questions when he was taking a break or we were having lunch together, whatever. And a lot of times they're willing to share with you because they see that you have a genuine interest in it. If you're walking in the studio talking about, yo, I can't wait to blow up so I could buy some rims or get the $50,000 chain or whatever, they're not going to really talk to you. But if you're talking to them like you're really interested in music production and sound and stuff, they'll share with you.
Yeah.
And, so it was a step by step. I said, okay, first I have to go to school. Then I have to go internship at a studio. And then I have to try and learn as much as I can. I also went to AES and all that stuff. I got the free subscriptions to every magazine and read them from cover to cover.
That's good.
I spoke to mastering engineers. Yes, when digital first started taking hold, I hated the sound of it. I went to talk to the mastering engineers about what can be done to make it sound better. And that's when I learned about the bit depth and dither and quantization error and clock, how important clock is and all that stuff.
You did your homework, man.
Yeah, I did, right. You have to do your homework and you have to plan it out. You can't just jump up and say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a producer, blah, 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 and then just jump into it.
Sure.
You have to take it step by step. And if you can, get someone to be like a mentor, even if it's not full-time, like part-time or whatever. But I think the best thing for someone to do is actually work in actual studio, work on actual projects, so you can see the real-world application of the knowledge that you get from school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, man, it's been great having you talk about your journey. I want to remind everybody that, again, Gary is a Grammy Award-winning engineer who's been in the business for over 20-something years now. And it started off as just a dream. And, he fought to keep that dream going. He never gave up. He fought through some adversities, but still maintained. All the naysayers let him go and said, we're going to do this anyway. I'm going to do this. And now here he is, successful and living his dream, still enjoying sound every day. And I think as we continue to watch Gary do even more things, I know he'll always be successful because he's always keeping his eye on that sound, the impossible thing. He's always driven for that. So, man, we should appreciate you staying and talking with us, man. Is there anything we should be looking out for, supporting you with? Are there any social networking that they can come and talk to you or communicate with you?
Yeah, they could find me on Instagram. At Gary Noble Show, Facebook, Gary Noble, LinkedIn, Gary Noble.
Okay. I'll put them at the bottom of the screen.
You could hit me up on social media, and I'll talk to you. But this is the thing: if I don't respond immediately, that means I'm in the middle of a session.
You're working.
I'm working. When I take a break, I go to the messages, and I get a lot of messages every day.
I'm sure.
So I go through, and the ones that are relevant to what I do, I reply to them.
That's awesome. We appreciate that. Hey, everybody, we just thank you for staying around and talking to us at Chasing the Impossible.